Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
I need new music.
Discover new music now. JJO.
Brock, it's John with Skillet.
John, how are you, man?
Good, how's it going?
I am doing wonderfully. I'm freezing my ass off, but you know what? I'm getting a chance to talk with you, so I think I'll be all right, bud. I'll be all right. Yeah. It's cold here, man. It's cold. I'm not gonna lie. Where are you at today? Where are you calling from?
Well, funny enough, I just hit Georgia, and it's pretty beautiful. It's 65.
Oh, good for you, John. I'm up here freezing my ass off. I got a park on, sitting in the studio, and you're nice and warm in Georgia eating peaches. Must be nice, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very strange to wake up today and be like, oh, my gosh, it's not icy out. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad at least one of us is enjoying some nice weather, so that's good. So, well, I got to thank you so much, man, for taking the time. Of course, this is Discover New Music on JJO, a chance for us to really break down what's happening in the rock world. And, of course, big news, Skillet has the new album Dominion out now. It's amazing. It's exciting stuff, buddy. It is.
Well, thank you so much. I'll tell people what's happening in the world of rock music. We just dropped a killer record. People need to go check it out. I'm very, very pumped about it, very proud of the album. Go check it out. If you like it, I want to ask everybody to do me a favor and tell somebody. We got to get the word of mouth going. You know what I'm saying?
And luckily for you, it's very easy for us as fans to tell people about how great Skillet is. I mean, I'll be honest, it could just be you doing a instrumental bass slapping, I don't know, free-for-all, and we'd all be like, amazing, awesome job, that's great. But
well, I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
So let's talk about this now. And I will have to say, the interview isn't going to be as long today, mostly because I had like 3 pages of beard questions. If people don't know, you have probably one of the best beards in the music world, and I had a big beard, but I had 2 dreams about shaving my face, and so I finally just out of nowhere shaved my face. So I basically scrapped all my beard questions. I just wanted to tell you that the interview is going to be shorter because all those questions are gone, and I love your beard. So we'll leave it at that. Is that okay?
And now thank you. And now you're super cold.
Dude,
the wind on your face up north is terrible in the winter.
I went ice fishing the other day, and I just shaved, and I was so mad at myself. I could have been out there looking like Jeremiah Johnson, grizzly, but no, instead I got windburn, and I'm just mad. So I'm glad you're still rocking it. That's good. That's good for us.
That's good. You say shaving before you go ice fishing is what we call imprudent.
It's, as my wife would say, numerous times. That's good. All right. So with that said, beard questions out of the way, let's talk about the new record, Dominion. I think it's fair to say that it's been kind of a crazy past 2 years, especially in the music world. We've seen concerts turned upside down, records being delayed, people not being able to get out. For Skillet to bring all that together through kind of all of the difficulties, getting a new record out in 2022 has got to feel pretty great achievement for you guys.
It is exciting, you know, and as you say, there's that feeling of like, when do you release this thing? Mm-hmm. You know, originally we were going to release it about 2 months ago, like in November, and it's just really kind of hard to know. But I had to say, I just felt very optimistic about the trend of where the world is going. And I don't want to be too corny about it, but sometimes you feel like you wrote a record that is for now, you know, and I don't know, that might sound kind of corny, but you're like, this is a record that needs to come out at this time. I think it's saying something important, or it's an important, you know, sentiment for a certain time, what have you. And I just felt like I'm optimistic about where we're going. I don't think this is going to be a year of destruction and devastation. I think this is going to be a year of rebuilding, and people need hope they need hope and inspiration in order to kind of get going, face whatever life is throwing at you, which it's been throwing a lot at a lot of us for the last couple of years. But I just felt very optimistic about it, and I thought this is the time for this record to come out. It's going to, at the very least, it'll take people to the gym, and we'll get that COVID weight off. But maybe there's even something more that it could do for people, give people hope and some drive. So I feel very optimistic about it.
And I'm sure everyone is excited to hear that, to hear your optimism, the band's optimism, which is, I think, what the world can use more of right now. You mentioned something that I thought was kind of interesting, writing a record for now. And maybe just in the moment you're feeling that, did you feel maybe it's just the way of the world, your influences, what you were seeing on the news, what you were seeing on social media? Did you kind of feel that pulling you in directions in making this record and kind of influencing in that way?
Well, yeah, I would definitely say yes. I mean, I'll tell you something interesting. We had a record that came out in 2019. So it came out in September of 19. So that's 4 or 5 months before the pandemic hit, right?
Yep.
And that record, every record kind of has a theme, and people say, what do you want to say on this record? And I said, so this is 4 months before the pandemic. I said, the message of this record is to prepare people for how tough the world can be. Because I said, what I see happening in the world is that we have kind of, over the last few years, raised an entire generation to believe that every day is awesome. Every day is going to be better than the last. Nothing can ever stop me. I'm the best me there will ever be. You're perfect the way you are. And I said, what I see happening is a generation of people who have not really had to deal with adverse things, all of a sudden I can't think of my words, hard times, right? And what I'm afraid of is that something's going to happen that is going to turn people's world upside down, and they are not going to be prepared for the battle at hand, because every day is not awesome. Life is really hard, but you can make it. There's hope, but you have to learn through the struggle. And so it was really funny. That was 4 months before the pandemic, and something's going to happen. And I wrote this record to tell people life is going to be hard, but you can make it. Get ready for. And of course, had no idea this was going to happen. And so It's funny that was a little prescient in that sense. And now, yes, there's all these things happen. What I see is people not prepared to handle fear. To handle that. Yes, there is a lot to be afraid of. That's what life is like. And I don't think that the idea is to run away from fear just to keep yourself safe at all costs. I think we sometimes have to face that, and it's going to be trials, it's going to be ugly, but that's a little bit of what life is. And you can come out on the back end stronger, but it might be a tough season, and this has been a tough season, and there are things to be afraid of. But I want to encourage people to face the fear and come out on the other side stronger. That's really what our song Surviving the Game, that was the first single. That's what Surviving the Game is about. It's saying, hey, you know what, I'm not going to run from the fear. I'm going to embrace it and face it head on.
I love that, and I love the message with that, and of course everyone can hear Surviving the Game here on JJO. We've been playing it like crazy, people digging it, of course, with most things that Skillet does. It's not a hard sell there. Now, with the pandemic, and I don't want to beat this today because we had a lot of great stuff to talk about, but I do think in following my favorite musicians and following artists and kind of the ups and downs with this, what do you think? Let's focus on the good side of it. What was maybe a positive that you pulled out from, maybe having tours canceled, recording differently? Was there a positive, a silver lining that maybe you didn't expect in making this record in the world we're kind of living in right now?
Well, that's interesting. I think one of the there were probably some practical positives. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind, which might not be what you're asking, is I do think that the pandemic sort of, let me say it like this. I think most all of us would recognize that we all have like an inner struggle happening with all sorts of things, right? And one of that inner struggle situations would be we all have two different kinds of people inside of us. One is again, the one that wants to face the things we have going on, the struggles we have in life, and kind of overcome it. And the other one is just give up. And I think that life is a battle between those things. Now, you could also call it sometimes a battle between good and evil. Of course, there are spiritual and, biblical things I would say about that, but I'm not really even getting into the religious side. I'm more getting into those mind battles that we all kind of have. Do I eat the donut today or do I not eat the donut? That's it in its simplest kind of most banal sense, isn't it? And so I think the pandemic sort of revealed to us who we want to be, and number one, are we going to be the people that say there's no hope, just give up, I'm going to eat donuts for the rest of my life, or do you want to kind of reach for something more? I think the pandemic for me really solidified who I was, and made me say, you know what, life is short, and I want to make the most of my time, and I want to help the most people that I can help, and spend my time doing things that actually matter. And so I think that some people have drove them down to more of a core belief. Maybe that's a good way to say it. It challenges your core beliefs. What is it that you believe at the end of the day is like the rock that you stand on, and did it last through the pandemic? And if it didn't last, that's okay. Then change your core belief. Ask some questions. You know what I mean? If it didn't work, that's okay. It's like, just like the scientific process, it's hypothesis. You tried it, it didn't work. Now let's regroup and let's attack it from a different way. One of the things for me that I fell in love with even more is just the beautiful principles of this country, about American freedom, liberty, and how that our country doesn't give us individual rights. That those individual rights pre-exist government. Government protects those individual rights. So I have freedom of speech, and that means that I can speak out against the government if I want to, in, of course, a nonviolent way. That's an amazing right. That is a gift to the world, and so that's one of the things that I really loved coming from this was, you know what? I've always considered myself patriotic, but I'm more so now than I was 2 years ago.
It gave you a chance to kind of be introspective on that and maybe find something that's fallen to the back burners. And I think a lot of people have seen that, and we've all adjusted to what's been going on there and finding our new us, finding time that we would have had otherwise. Let's break down this record here. Obviously, Dominion, out now. People, get your hands on it. You're going to love it. Skillet at, I think, its finest. 11th studio album. That's kind of a big number to put out there. John?
Dude, I cannot believe, I know I've said this to you before, I'll probably say it every interview, I can't believe we're still in business. I really can't. It's amazing.
A good feeling to have. Obviously, you guys have kind of perfected what Skillet does, or maybe not. Do you feel like maybe you've really honed in on who Skillet is as a band? Do you think you're like, all right, this is who we are. We know who we are. I mean, there's always room for growth, but maybe in your mind, when it's time to put pen to paper, lyrics to paper, music to whatever you're recording, do you feel maybe like you got that locked down at this point?
I don't know. That, again, that's oh man, there's a lot of things pulling me on that. In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. Sometimes you go, man, I think I know. I'm gonna try something a little bit new, and it doesn't work at all. And then you go, oh, that was stupid. And then sometimes you do, and then you're like, oh wow, that's a little bit of a new thing for us, and we're stepping out a little bit. It just kind of depends. I think what I will say is this: I think that I definitely know who we are from a messaging point of view. What is it? What is the vibe that Skillet wants to give out? And I think anybody that's seen a Skillet show or heard an interview of mine like we're talking now, people kind of get an idea of who we are, because kind of what you see is what you get. We're friendly, we're positive, we're very inclusive of all sorts of different kinds of people, and I want to help make people's lives better through music. And if you agree with me about politics or religion or life, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I just want people to have a good time at the show, listen to some rock music. People pick up on that, and I think those are the things that are very solid about Skillet. Obviously, I come from a spiritual point of view, and I write a lot of spiritual songs, and people know that. So I feel very sure about that. And people have either, bought into that, or they, maybe they decided they didn't like it. But for the most part, that's what Skillet fans expect. But the things that are not solid, I do feel very open to trying something I've never tried before musically. Like, hey, let's try it. Let's go for it. And sometimes that's some really great things. I mean, our biggest song we ever released was called Monster, of course. Monster was very different for us. In fact, what was unique about Monster was that Skillet hadn't really done something like that. It sounded a little bit more like other bands, actually. It was almost like, hey, maybe we don't do the strings, and maybe we don't do the mullet production, and a lot of, the hip-hop beats that you sometimes hear in Skillet, those electronic elements. But what if we strip it back and just do like a rock riff, and then, of course, it becomes our biggest song? So you never know, man. I just kind of roll with it, try not to overthink it. Try to give the fans something new, but keep what's unique about us.
I love it, man. And I do have, you mentioned seeing a Skillet show, kind of the positivity, the fun. First time I saw you was Summerfest. I'm trying to remember. This was years ago. I was a young man with frosted tips, and I thought way too highly of myself. But I loved the show. It was amazing, the risers, and it just blew my mind. And my wife made sure I told you that you were her very first. Skillet was her very first concert ever. She saw you down in Missouri many years ago. Yeah, so yeah, I won't put a date on it because I don't want you to feel old, but it was a while ago. That's all I'll tell you. That's all I'll let you know.
Let me say, we all can guess when it may have been because you said frosted tips.
Yeah, so yeah, you got the timeline around that. I'm not proud of it.
It's like saying that you had a mullet and then saying, I won't tell you when that was. We all know when that was.
You have an idea. All right, so again, if you're just joining us, John Cooper from Skillet on the phone talking about the new album Dominion, out now. Go get your hands on it. People have been hearing the first single, Surviving the Game. But John, let's talk a little bit more about the album. What I'm sure you're proud of all the songs, but is there one song on the album that maybe people haven't heard yet, or maybe when they get the record that you're extra passionate about? Is there one that really oh man, if you were to describe the album to one person by listening to it, what song would you give them?
Oh, man. You're asking me the hard stuff. I don't know if I'd say there's one song that necessarily identifies the record, but we did just, we released the title track. And maybe I'll do an amalgamation of your last question and this question. The title track is called Dominion.
Yep.
I don't necessarily think it's like the indicative song that says that's what the record sounds like, but it is different for us. And we tried a little something new, and I just really like this song. It's very up-tempo. It's got a little bit of more of metal and punk influence, which is the punk side is very different for us. And I don't mean that it sounds punk. It's just upbeat, so it might be something you might hear, like a mixture of bands like even Shine Down or Muse, like bringing some of those type elements into it. And I thought that was really fun and really cool. It's got a wicked guitar solo. We really kind of went off the leash on it, and it might be something that you're not used to Skillet doing. So maybe check that one out.
I like it. But, of course, as soon as you put it in your CD player or you get it online, wherever you get it, are they still doing CDs? Yeah, that's still a thing, for sure. If I said cassette, we might. Not bringing cassettes back. People will be able to hear it in its entirety. Again, it's out now, so get it wherever you need to, online, in the CD store, wherever you got to go. Get your hands on it in your ears. We'll be very happy that you did. Again, Dominion, out now from Skillet. I'm just so excited about this, man, and having new music in 2022 is something I think us as music fans, rock fan, whatever, we can really get behind because we definitely saw that hit with all this craziness. So awesome that Skillet is bringing it to us. I have just a few more questions for you, John. Have you got a couple more minutes? You got? Can you humor me for just a little bit longer? Awesome.
I love it. Hit me, man.
Okay, so I know you're a bass player. Okay, you like slapping the bass. I'm sure you play everything else, but I figure bass being your specialty, I'm going to give you a couple. You got to choose who you'd put in your band, okay? All right. So
okay, hit me.
I'm gonna. It might be tough as a bass player to play with. All right, Geddy Lee or Les Claypool?
Geddy Lee.
Geddy Lee. Okay. Cliff Burton or Lemmy?
Lemmy. Oh, my gosh.
I know. I almost even feel bad putting Lemmy in. I mean, Lemmy's on a level all his own, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, he's almost not like a bass player. He's like some sort of like force. He's like a force that comes into your band and makes everything cool.
I'm trying to think what. I believe I was reading somewhere Ace of Spades was written in the back of a van while they were like speeding down the Autobahn, which who else would do that except Lemmy, right? You know what I mean? It's unbelievable.
Even the fact that they weren't speeding down the highway, they were speeding down the Autobahn.
Yeah, right.
I mean, come on.
Aggressively speeding down the Autobahn, you're doing something right. All right, I'll just do one more. You have Bootsy Collins or let's say Geezer Butler. Bootsy Collins, Geezer Butler.
Oh, Bootsy Collins. I mean, just absolutely awesome.
I love it. And, I mean, the outfits, too. He might give you a complex about the outfit you're wearing, but, I mean, you got Bootsy Collins with you, so that's good.
Hey, man, I'll show up with frosted tips, and we will be ready.
I should have never told you. I should have never told you about my frosted tips. You're going to hold it against me. Another question. Okay, so you nailed those. You did great. I'm always intrigued because I'm sure you've had influences, whether, growing up. I know you grew up in a musical family, the influences you had when you were younger and growing. What maybe is a band or an artist on your personal playlist, your CD collection, MP3 player, what have you, that maybe people would be surprised to find out that you listen to? Do you have one that'd be like, oh, yeah, I listen to those guys?
Sure. Funny thing is I got a lot of them because people are surprised on multiple levels, like meaning genre, or even like what those bands are like, quote unquote, about. People think of Skillet and they think of like the spiritual and the religious side of our music. And like, I'm the biggest Five Finger Death Punch fan in the world. I love Five Finger. Some people are surprised about that. I love Breaking Benjamin, but people are not surprised about that because I think there's some crossover with our music. But Breaking Ben is probably my favorite. But other surprising ones would be things like that. My favorite band of all time is Yes.
Oh,
and speaking of bass players, Yes's bass player, Chris Squire, is my favorite bass player. And people are very surprised about that because you don't really pick up on the kind of prog rock influences on Skillet unless you see us live. And when people see us live, they go, oh, it was actually more musical than the record. We do a lot of that kind of stuff because I love Yes and Kansas. And I even like the more metal prog stuff, whether it's Porcupine Tree and Dream Theater and that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
So some people are very surprised about that. So that's my favorite bass player. And my second favorite bass player is Doug Pinnick from King's X. And King's X has been what do you call it when we usually call it walkout music, but basically the song that plays right before the band comes on stage. Sometimes we call it pre-roll.
Intro, yeah, your entrance to the winner's circle music, I don't know, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that's the last song that plays on the reel before we begin our set, and it's King's X. And that's really because I think King's X is like the awesomest rock band that never really, really broke through, but all the bands love King's X. Every band is like, oh, I love King's X. So I always kind of as an paying homage to them, I guess you.
I like a band's band, if you will, like that. That's
Yes, a band's band for sure.
Awesome. I love it, man. That's fantastic. I always like kind of getting in the mind and seeing what you're on there because everyone just maybe assumes, oh, he's just got rock on all the time. But it's cool to kind of see what maybe you listen to when you're having some coffee and just getting your day going. I do have one more question for you, but before we get to that, once again, John Cooper from Skillet, thank you so much for the time. This has just been wonderful and just so informative. Everyone, get out, get Dominion. It is available now from Skillet. You can hear Surviving the Game on JJO. We know you love it, and we're going to keep playing it for you. Final question, and this is the most important question, John, you will ever answer in your entire life, okay?
I'm ready.
Would you rather fight a man with bear arms or a bear with man arms?
I think I would rather fight a bear with man arms.
Oh, boy, that's a dangerous game you're playing there, John.
I mean, either one seems kind of dangerous. I'm just thinking maybe the bear won't be quite as smart. A lot of fighting is really more about intellect. So So if he's got human arms, but the intellect of a bear. I think I'll go that. I don't really know.
So you're hoping that your superior brain will be able to outsmart the deadly bear who now
That's
has
right.
lost his paws. I mean, I guess that's a good way to think about it. That's a good way to think about
Yes,
it.
I mean, fighting is an art. Even though who was that actress that was making fun of MMA, and she said she was like, "I'm sorry," which is not an art form, and she was being all high and mighty.
I don't
Meryl
know.
Streep.
Oh, Streep.
Remember Meryl
Okay.
Streep about 2 years ago. She's like, all you'll have left is, martial arts, which I'm sorry is not an art form. And I was like, you know what? You don't know what you're talking about.
You
It
get
is
into
an
the
art
ring.
form, and bears are not good at art.
Yeah, that's good. And even with man arms, I think you're absolutely right. You know what? I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think you made the right choice. You made the right choice.
All right. I won you over with
You
my
did.
superior intellect.
You did. You defeated the bear, and you won me over, frosted tips and all. All right. Well, John, once again, I appreciate the time. You're an absolute amazing human being, and we are so excited to get the new Skillet out. We appreciate it. Thank you so much, brother.
Oh, I sure loved it. Thank you for doing the interview. Thanks, everybody, for rocking with us today.
Absolutely. Discover new music with me, Brock, anytime on the homepage of WJJO.com, in the JJO app, or wherever you get your podcast. The JJO Discover New Music Podcast. Listen, rate, share, and subscribe.